This is Chair Michelle Espinoza, and I'm calling the Real Estate Commission meeting to order today, Tuesday, June 6th, 2023. Marcia, may we have roll call?
Michelle Espinoza,
Here.
Renee Lind,
Here.
Joe Chang,
Here.
Graham Kaltenbach.
Here.
Your newest member, who's a public member, Josh Broderick, is absent today, but you have a quorum.
Great, thank you so much. May I get approval of the April 4th, 2023 Real Estate Commission meeting minutes?
Madam Chair, I motion to approve the April 4th, 2023 Real Estate Commission meeting minutes.
Thank you, Joe. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I believe I heard Renee first. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes for the approval of the April 4th meeting minutes. Do we have any public presentation?
So if anybody from the public would like to address the commission, please hit your hand icon and I will call your name and unmute you. Madam Chair, we have Gary Wolf. Gary, if you go ahead and hit the mic to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
Thanks for the opportunity to present public comment here. My name is Gary Wolf. I have 48 years of experience in title insurance industry, own a title insurance consulting business, along with a title insurance website that is free for consumers and real estate brokers. On March 27th, Director Waters forwarded to you my letter of March 23rd that presented in detail the idea, purpose, and need for a disclosure of information, duties, and authorization regarding title insurance and closing settlement services. This proposed disclosure would provide consumers with more transparency of information, more closing protections, possible savings on costs, and a choice in shopping and selecting their title company. Additionally, most real estate brokers learn more about title insurance and closing settlements than consumers do, but don't necessarily have to impart such information to consumers. This proposed disclosure creates a clearer understanding of the duties and liabilities between consumers and real estate brokers, while educating and assisting consumers about the business of title insurance and closing settlement services. I was recently informed by Director Waters that none of the commissioners really wanted to have this item on the agenda for discussion, which leads me to ask a question: why isn't the commission interested in discussing this matter, which benefits both consumers and real estate brokers in their transactions? Thank you. I'll answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Gary. Commissioners, did you have any questions for Gary?
I'm not for Gary specifically, but I wonder if would this be referred to the forms committee? Would this be more of a, I guess, forms committee jurisdiction, I'll say?
Since it was addressed to you all, that's why I forwarded it to you. I do have a question for Gary. Gary, have you ever contacted the Division of Insurance about having them create a form since they regulate title?
I've talked to them, as you know, Marcia, over the years, and they're somewhat not interested, and they just kind of ignore that. I'm just saying, in my vernacular, that real estate brokers, they're making recommendations, and they don't see that as a violation of kind of steering or selling title insurance. So they've kind of passed the buck on. So my real concern is the fact that real estate brokers are in front of their client, the lister or the buyer, the first person in front of that client, okay? It's not the title industry. The title industry comes in after the fact, okay? So there's quite a few matters that a broker, I guess, passes on to their client, and there's a lot of trust and expectations of clients of their brokers. So I feel that, this is where it starts, okay? And once that recommendation is made, okay, by the broker, the consumer thinks, okay, well, I'm paying you some money to protect me, and not protect me, but represent me in my interests. But, I feel that there's a lot of information that is not being properly passed on to consumers, whether it's closing protection letters or the ability to, I'm just saying, save money, okay, or shop, which have a big effect on a real estate transaction, both for the broker and for the consumer. Because if it doesn't happen, the broker doesn't get paid either. So that's why I brought it up back to the commission.
So commissioners, if you would like, I am more than happy to put this on the global list, and it's something that the forms committee can vet.
I think at this point, that would be where a good place to start.
Agree.
I would appreciate that. And I did send it to the commissioners, through Marcia, from the standpoint that all my attendances over the years at the commission meetings, it's the forms committee that takes directions from the commissioner.
Right, but that's not something that we create. So, I think Marcia's suggestion of having them vet it and, do that kind of legwork and then present it to us is something that we're looking for. So Marcia, is that something that we need to vote on, or are you good with us just giving you direction to have them do that?
I'm good. I'll add it to their global list.
I appreciate that. All right. Eric, do we have any further public comment, public presentations?
If anybody else from the public would like to address the commissioners, please hit your hand icon. And Madam Chair, I do not see anybody else.
Great, thank you so much. Looks like we are on to agenda items for next meeting.
And so commissioners, this would be for your August meeting. The June 20th meeting will be just a strictly non-rulemaking hearing for the forms. Is there anything that you'd like added to your August agenda?
I don't have anything.
I don't have anything.
All right. Nope, I think we are good. So it looks like we are on to complaints, investigations, and audits.
Morning, commissioners.
Morning.
Your first item is investigative matter A. This was audit number X 2023-8. A routine audit was opened on the respondent, which identified multiple issues, including the respondent's property management agreement and lease did not include the required disclosures for attorney drafted forms because the forms state they were prepared and were reviewed by legal counsel, indicating that the attorney may not have actually drafted the forms. Additionally, the respondent was providing the broker's disclosure to the tenant after receiving confidential information. However, the respondent addressed this during the audit. The respondent's trust accounts were not set up as actual fiduciary accounts, were not labeled correctly. However, the respondent recently provided documentation indicating that the accounts were now fiduciary accounts. The respondent's rental proceeds for the broker-owned properties were commingled with money belonging to others, but that was also corrected during the audit. The initial reconciliations did not include a journal and had negative ledger balances due to bills paid when owner funds were not available, but the respondent appears to have corrected this during the audit. Conflict of interest associated with the broker-owned properties and the respondent's maintenance company were not being disclosed, nor were current fee amounts. Specifically, the audit showed that a 10% markup or administrative fee was being charged per maintenance receipts, although only 5% was disclosed in the property management agreement. The respondent updated the disclosure for the 10% fee, but has not addressed if there's a plan to refund the overcharged administration fees on previous invoices. Possible violations include 12-10-217-1I, converting, diverting, commingling funds, 12-10-2171M, violation of any commission rule. Rules 5.2, money belonging to others must be deposited in trust or escrow. Rule 5.9, diversion, conversion prohibited. Rule 5.10, commingling prohibited. Rule 6.5, brokers relationship disclosures in writing. Rule 617, duty to disclose conflict of interest and license status, and Rule 7.1, attorney drafted forms. Recommended disciplinary action includes diversion, a fine of $1,000, and coursework and trust accounts. And Auditor Betsy Meredith is here to answer any questions you may have.
Good morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so I have a question about him not, the respondent not addressing a plan to refund the overcharge. When that was brought up, did the respondent just not answer, or?
It appeared he just diverted I don't have a response from him. There was just nothing indicated. And I did ask the question, and he did not provide any plan.
And I'm reviewing the updated PMA and lease, and it still looks like there's the incorrect language in both of those. Is that the case?
Yes, I do believe that there still some anomalies on a couple of them. And just so you know, my Adobe PDF is not having enough coffee this morning, so I may have to defer to Eddie on some of this. But yes, I believe there are still a couple of things that need to be fixed. I mean, he did make efforts towards correction, but there are a few anomalies remaining.
There's still the incorrect verbiage with the attorney preparation on both of those that I saw. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
That is correct.
So I'm wondering if this, I mean, you know, I hate to use resources when we don't need to. But if these things are still not corrected, why are we not doing a follow-up audit?
It's a good question. I think in this case, there were quite a few of the issues that were addressed and corrected. So including that, you know, a majority of the trust account related issues, there still is potentially some follow-up with the property management agreement and lease, the language that's in there, and then following up with the broker to see if there is any plan to recommend refunding the consumers in regards to, or the owners for the overcharges. I don't know if that's something we necessarily have the jurisdiction to require, on our particular end when we're doing the audit, but it was something we certainly looked into, addressing with them.
And he does have a plan moving forward to ensure the maintenance administrative fee matches, but there is no plan of the retroactive.
Okay. Renee, I'd love to get your feel on this.
I would recommend additional coursework and an increased fine, and that I don't know if we need to do an audit, or can he just provide us with the correct verbiage, with the updated PMA and lease, rather than doing a new audit. If he could send those in and we can verify that they have been done correctly by the attorney.
I think I'll defer to Eddie on that. I think in the past, having follow-up submissions has created some concerns, but I'll let Eddie handle that.
We can certainly do a follow-up audit. That's something that's within our, our ability to do so. So I don't see any issue or problem with that if that's something that the commission were to recommend.
And I'd happily narrow the scope to what was not corrected in the previous audit.
Good morning, Angela.
Good morning, commissioners. I was just going to remind the commissioners that the division has authority on your behalf to do audits, whether or not you order them. So it would also be a possibility that staff could follow up on that narrow issue without necessarily ordering a follow-up audit. It's up to you how you want to style this.
I think I would like to see something like more of a narrow scope. I don't think we need to reopen a whole full audit, but just make sure that they're doing what they said they're going to do. I would think. Renee, what do you think? Is that what
Yes,
kind of you're thinking?
Yes.
I would agree with
Generally-
that as well. Yeah.
Generally speaking, that when we do a follow-up audit, we try to focus on the issues that are outstanding or haven't been corrected from the previous audit. So it's not like we're going back in and kind of starting from ground one all over again.
Okay. Great. With that, do we have a motion?
I move to accept staff recommendation with the addition of coursework and property management and increasing the fine to $2,500.
Okay, do we have a second?
And the follow-up
And the
narrowed
follow-up.
audit.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe. Any further discussion?
I just want to jump in. I am on board with everything with the increased coursework in property management and a directed follow-up audit. But I think the fine of 2,500 is a little onerous. So I would be personally, I think if we're going to do a follow-up fine and coursework, I think the fine is probably fine where it is. But you know, I may be on the minority here.
No, Graham, you bring up a good point. I would agree with that. Because we are doing the follow-up, yeah.
Yeah, and those, you know, they're no small task.
We have multiple rules and statutes that are at issue. The fact that the PMA and the lease have still not been corrected when he was told during the audit what needed to be corrected, it hasn't been done. That's why I think the fine should be higher. That would have been an easy correction that wasn't accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to give the respondent some credit that he has been correcting, you know, some, I believe.
Right. I mean, from my understanding, and I hear where you're coming from, Renee. From my understanding, from what I'm hearing from the investigator, is that there is a substantial improvement in, the forms. They are moving generally in the right direction. And I just don't know that adding $1,500 would, you know, on top of, you know, an audit and increasing coursework would probably have, you know, the desired effect of what you're looking for, which is like full compliance. It seems like, you know, if they're moving in the right direction, you know, I think maybe taking more of a carrot versus a stick approach here might be better with this person, but not that an audit is a carrot.
Well, it's not necessarily an audit. We're just requesting this information. And these are two of the most important documents in property management that could have easily been corrected and were chosen not to be.
Well, there's also the concern that the respondent has not made any comment about refunding overcharges. So. So we had a first and a second. So I think we should just vote and then go from there. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay, or aye.
Okay, so we need a new motion then.
So this respondent, it was a routine audit. It was in a follow-up audit, correct?
Correct.
Correct. This was an initial routine audit.
No
First
prior,
time.
no prior stipulations.
Correct.
Has been correcting and just have a couple of deficiencies. I mean, I think if we're kind of setting a new precedent if we're going to raise the fine that much. And I do take back, but if I can take back my second motion, I would.
Well, that one failed, so we need to create a new motion.
So Renee and Michelle, would, in the interest of finding some common ground here, I do hear what you're saying about, the forms. If we wanted to go up in a fine, I think maybe 1,500. If that's the message we want to send or you want to send, I understand. I'm not trying to, downplay that. I felt like it was quite a markup to go up to 2,500. And I kind of felt like that wasn't really discussed until the motion was made about the, how high we wanted to go up in the increase. So I wasn't trying to be, overly dismissive of, what you were, your commentary. I felt like 2,500 was just too steep for me.
That's completely fair. Completely fair, Graham. Would you like to make a motion? I'm okay with the 1,500, and Renee and I think are in a little bit. We're seeing kind of a stance on two of the issues. One being the forms, and then one being not being, so responsive of what was done previous. Going forward, yes, but still, it's discipline of what has happened in the past. And for me, if they would have taken ownership of, yes, I'm getting this fixed, those forms, and yes, I have a plan on refunding the overcharge that I did, then for me, it would have been, easy peasy to just do what staff recommended. But with those two issues, I'm fine with the 1,500 with the additional coursework and the follow-up narrowed audit.
Okay.
Joe, your thoughts?
I agree.
Renee, how are you feeling about that?
There are 7 violations, each of which could have a $2,500 fine. And we are talking about doing one $2,500 fine, not 7 of them. So I think that we're giving quite a bit. I think the $2,500 is important. He was told what to do with the PMA and the lease. It wasn't done. It was asked about the markups. Nothing was done there. So I think 2,500 is more than generous.
Okay. All right. Graham or Joe, would you like to make a motion?
Sure, I can make a motion. In Commission Matter A, I move to accept staff's recommendation with the addition of coursework in property management, a follow-up audit, and a fine of $1,500.
Are you adding also the coursework in property management?
Sorry, did I miss that? Also coursework in property management.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes as presented by Commissioner Graham. Thank you.
Your next item is investigative matter B. This is audit number X 2023-7. Routine audit was opened on the respondent, which identified multiple issues, including the respondent's property management agreement and lease did not include the required disclosures for attorney drafted forms. However, this was corrected during the audit. Additionally, the respondent was not providing the broker disclosure to tenant. The respondent attested that they will do so going forward, but did not provide proof of providing this to any of the current tenants. Also, the respondent's trust accounts that don't appear to have the proper labeling, and both the security deposit and rental trust accounts contain negative ledger balances. The respondent stated this was due to paying bills on behalf of owners without sufficient funds available for that owner. The respondent also manages one property owned by a former associate broker of hers who still holds a Colorado real estate license. The funds belonging to this broker and property are held in the respondent's primary trust account that holds money belonging to others. The respondent was requested to segregate these funds, but did not do so based on her attorney's response stating that this broker is no longer an associate of the respondent's brokerage. Therefore, these funds can be held in the respondent's primary rent trust account with money belonging to others. Possible violations include 12-10-2171I, converting, diverting, commingling funds, 12-10-2171M, violation of any commission rule, Rules 5.9, diversion, conversion prohibited, Rule 5.10, commingling prohibited, Rule 6.5, brokerage relationship disclosures in writing, and Rule 7.1, standard forms. Recommended disciplinary action includes diversion, a fine of $1,000, coursework and trust accounts, and a follow-up audit within 3 months. And again, Auditor Betsy Meredith is here to answer any questions you may have.
Great. Thank you. Any discussion?
So the reconciliations are still not compliant, is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. And again, this was a first time initial audit.
But you did work with them in trying to get them compliant, and they had multiple reconciliations they submitted, correct?
Correct. And there's progress being made. That said, we give them a time frame, and I wrote this up as it stood at the final submissions.
So just from my understanding, Betsy, so you work with them during an audit, you give them what is expected, required of them. And then that's why we do the follow-up audit, is to make sure that they are given time to implement these so we can see that they are actually in place, correct?
Well, and to clarify, we also give correction chances during the audit. So we don't just open it up and then write the report based on their initial submissions. We always make sure that they get opportunities to correct during the course of the audit.
So they've had multiple, because this has been going on for months. So they have had multiple opportunities to get things corrected, and we still have issues with balances and reconciliations.
Correct.
Yep.
With this particular one, she is planning on shutting the business down. She's getting out of it altogether. That said, as it stands at the close of this audit, this was still open and she was still running properties.
So again, I would recommend a higher fine. There are 6 violations at $2,500 each, and we've only got 1,000. There have been ample time to correct the reconciliations, and it's not been done. So I would recommend a small increase to $2,500 fine.
Any further discussion? May I get a motion?
I move to accept staff recommendation with the change of the fine being $2,500.
Do we have a second? Okay, hearing no second, do we have any other conversation, comments, questions?
Do we have missing people?
Yeah. I mean,
Oh, go ahead. Joe.
I'm going to echo the same thing as the last case. Again, first routine audit. It's not a follow-up. There's no prior steps. I believe the respondent has been trying to correct, hasn't purposely been, not responding or anything like that. So I wouldn't agree with that big of a fine. in this case.
The reconciliations are fixable and it's not been done. It was given months to do it and they still weren't corrected. This is not something that you just go, oh, well, that it could have been fixed and it was not.
I mean, you know, I'm going to echo Commissioner Chang here also. And, you know, I think what we're looking for here is protection of the consumer. And I see this respondent first time step and making progress, and I would like to point out, if we're going to do a similar, disciplinary recommendation or discipline, I don't really feel like a diversion and a fine of, let's say, $1,500 or $1,750, coursework in trust accounts and property management and a follow-up audit is really letting someone off easy. I hear what you're saying. I don't think it's letting someone off easy, or that we're being overly lenient, given the amount of time that this, that these all take up. That's just sort of my thought.
Now, the reconciliations, we're reconciling the ledgers, et cetera, and these are not the broker's funds. These are other people's money. And if we're trying to protect the consumer, that's why this is so important, because this is not the broker's money, it's the consumer's money. And by not having the reconciliations corrected, we are not protecting the consumer.
Betsy, how long is the audit process usually?
So,
Before it gets to
yes.
us?
So I open the initial audit, this particular example, open the audit, they get 15 days to respond. I believe she was given a slight extension of approximately 10 days. They send in the initial documents, I complete my audit. I do a correction letter giving them an additional 10 days. And then once they get that, depending on what it is, I may give them a little bit more time to correct. And then I write the report and it's submitted to Eddie and ultimately Marcia. And then you have it for a while, or then it sits for a while until it comes to the commission. But there's at least a good month and a half typically.
Okay. I don't have the full packet for this investigative matter in front of me. Can you, just to refresh my memory, how far off the trust accounts are? I mean, just refresh.
Give me a
my
second to
memory
pull that up. You bet.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be more help, serve for better clarity. Let's see if I can get it too.
So the biggest issue during this one was the negative ledger balances. And Eddie, feel free to step in here too, because again, I'm having some issues with the PDS. But the biggest concern initially was there was a negative $15,000 on the broker's ledger, which was basically, if there's negative, that means that account is owed $15,000. And then the security deposits had a negative of 4,300. Pardon my voice, I'm catching a little bit of a cold as well, of negative 4,300. And then Eddie, are you able to pull that most recent reconciliation? I'll tell you which exhibit that is.
Is it the one that has First Bank? Is it First Bank?
Let me pull up exhibit 8 here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to look at, so the last reconciliation that I have was the March
March.
reconciliation. And yeah, that's the First Bank. It's taking me a second to scroll down.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Eddie.
As we're researching, going through the process of researching it, we received reconciliations from December of 2022 through March of 2023. I believe the negative balances were declining
Correct.
by the most recent reconciliation we received, but they were still present. I'm just trying to look a little bit more here.
Yeah, your March letter that I'm looking at says it's a minus over $15,000 in one of them.
Yeah, there were 15 total negative ledger balances in the February reconciliations, with the largest being approximately negative 16,000. And that was labeled under one of the under a broker ledger. And then, like we mentioned, the security deposit trust account also had 3 negative ledger balances from December through February. I think those may have been corrected by the March reconciliation.
So in the March, I have, there's still a negative from what I'm looking at right now. There's still at least, I mean, there's over 1,000 of negatives, about 1,500 of negatives on the rent trust account. And it's usually the rent trust accounts we see the most negatives. It was unique in this one to see negatives on the security deposit.
Absolutely.
But as this stands right now, there are still some negatives, substantially better than the first series of reconciliations. I typically ask for multiple months to see the trend. And the most recent one still has negatives, but it's substantially improved.
So probably a stupid question, and I know I don't have as much experience as Renee does in property management with these negative balances. So is there an immediate danger to, the clients, the public, or is it more, could it be my bookkeeping is just off? And sorry, no, go ahead.
So negatives can be one of the things that I really look through, and Eddie and I spend quite a bit of time, we talk about some of these in details. Sometimes they're negative because they post, and you're going to have a case coming up here in a little bit that's like this. They post it, but they haven't actually sent the check. So it shows up negative on the ledger, but it's not a true negative. It's still not compliant because they didn't actually send the check. Now, there are plenty of cases this was one of them where there were true negatives. They sent the check. That owner didn't have enough money in that account. And so that check cleared. So somebody else's money paid that check. That is a true negative. Now, that said, there's still plenty of money in the bank account. The issue would be if they have to pay everybody out all at once, all on the same day, and there's negatives on that ledger, right? So is there a risk? Absolutely. There shouldn't be a negative ledger balance. Is it imminent danger? I would say no, but it's still not compliant and it's still negative and there is still missing money.
So then it's commingling because that ledger doesn't have enough money and the check that's been written and now is using someone else's money to pay that bill.
That would be conversion, diversion. Commingling would be.
Sorry.
No,
Yeah.
it's all right.
So,
I do that all the time. I get it.
So, but we have issue with it's not their money, it's someone else's money. That's one of the biggest issues.
Somebody else's money covered that check. You still there? I didn't lose you, did I?
No.
Okay.
When I think I was silent, so.
Well, but using other people's money is a problem for the public.
Well, that's why we take the time. The audit team takes out the time to flush out, is this a true negative? Or is this, they just posted it, but they didn't really send the check, right? That's our job to figure out, is this a true negative? And there were true negatives on this.
So there are multiple issues with this one. That's why I think it's more important to do a larger fine. I know you guys aren't used to doing them, but I think we need to set precedent and we need to increase some of these fines because these are extremely important issues having to do with people's money and the consumer.
So for verification, if they're holding money in a general trust account, if you're a licensed broker, and it's not in their individual account, that's still commingling.
Well,
I'm sorry, can you kind of repeat the question you had for us?
So a general trust, do they have to have individual trust for each? It's just one trust, right? A general trust,
So,
or do they have to have one for each
correct.
property?
correct. They
They-
have to, one rent, one security deposit, one trust account can hold multiple people's, but they can't have their own money in that. That would be commingling with a few exceptions that license law allows.
Commissioners,
Correct.
this is something that we're working on revising a few of the rules to clean them up a little bit because I think when the task force did definitions and that sort of stuff, the application, the plain language of the rules is creating some issues. So when you talk about broker funds, it's not the individual employing brokers, it's any broker's funds. And then you have the commingling issue where those broker funds can't go in with the general public. So we're working on cleaning it up so that if the scenario is I've got a broker's license, but I hire somebody to manage my property for me and I don't work for that brokerage firm, we are working on cleaning up the rules to deal with that scenario versus I work for the brokerage firm and I'm running my investment properties through there. That's going to be a different scenario that we're going to kind of propose alternatives for you guys to address. But right now, it's basically any broker's funds based on the definitions could lead to commingling.
And I apologize if that was the question you were asking. I may have missed that. Sorry about that.
Well, I don't deal in property management, so I just trying to get a clear understanding in my head. So
there was potential commingling as well as what we talked about, somebody else's money covering, right? So that would be the conversion diversion that we were talking about in this.
Okay. All right. So we have had a lot of discussion. I think we had a motion on the table. The motion, I believe, was the diversion, the fine of $2,500, the coursework in trust accounts, and the follow-up audit. Do we have a second for that motion? All right. Still no second, so we are going to need a new motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion. In investigative matter B, I move that we accept staff's recommendations of coursework, adding coursework in property management, a follow-up audit within 3 months, and an increase of the fine to $1,500.
With still the diversion, correct?
Yeah, still the diversion, correct. Sorry.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes with diversion, a fine of $1,500, coursework in trust accounts and property management, and a follow-up audit. We are on to the next case.
Okay, next item is investigative matter C. This is audit number X 2022-188. This was a follow-up audit. This was the follow-up audit that was open due to the stipulation of diversion signed by the respondent. The respondent's initial responses to this audit indicated ongoing issues with negative ledger balances, non-compliant reconciliations, that money belonging to others held by the respondent were not in established fiduciary trust accounts. After correction, the respondent changed trust accounts to actual fiduciary trust accounts. The account titles now contain the word trust or escrow, but do not contain a clear label identifying the purpose of the account. It appears that the respondent has ongoing negative ledger balances due to either accrual accounting methods or paying expenses for owners without sufficient funds. Additionally, broker funds were being held in trust accounts as a cushion to cover potential negative balances. Possible violations include 12-10-2171I, converting, diverting, commingling funds, 12-10-2171M, violation of any commission rule, Rule 5.9, diversion conversion prohibited, Rule 5.10, commingling prohibited, and Rule 5.14, record keeping requirements. Recommended disciplinary action includes diversion, a fine of $1,000, and a follow-up audit within 6 months. And again, Auditor Betsy Meredith is here to answer any questions you may have.
So this is in response to a stipulation that was already done.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, so this is not a first offense.
Correct.
Correct.
And there still are things that have not been fixed or corrected.
Correct.
So I would recommend additional coursework and an increase in fine on this one. This is not the first stipulation.
Did we require coursework on the first? Or I'm sure we did. What was the
We did.
coursework?
I'm trying to go back and look what that was.
I believe it was trust accounts, property management standard.
Brokerage administration, 24 hours. Property management, 6 hours. Trust accounts, 6 hours.
I'm not sure what kind of education they could get besides that if they completed that as far as coursework.
And that was some of the logic behind not having that recommendation this time around, as they've already gone through some of that training. So didn't necessarily know how that would benefit this individual.
Okay, so if we take the training off, then I think the fine should be increased because things are still not being done correctly after all that coursework.
And what are you recommending, Renee?
A minimum of 2,500, if not more, because this is the second and they've been through all the courses.
Thoughts? Joe, Graham?
I would agree with 2,500.
Yeah, in this case, I would agree with Commissioner Chang on and Renee on a fine of 2,500 because this is not a, this is a follow-up on a prior audit and they've had a prior step. So I am okay with increasing the fine on this one.
All right, may I get a motion?
I move to accept staff recommendation with the change, the fine being 2,500.
We have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Graham. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Next item is investigative matter D. This is audit number X 2023-4. This was a stipulation audit opened on the respondent based on both the previous investigation and audit. The respondent has made some corrections, but it appears that the respondent's trust accounts are not actual fiduciary accounts. Additionally, the respondent's three-way reconciliation journals do not contain the required elements listed in the accounting rule. The account also appears to contain negative ledger balances due to bounced checks with which the broker has continued to try and remedy to prevent the possible conversion of owner funds going forward. Possible violations include 12-10-2171I, converting, diverting, commingling funds, 12-10-2171M, violation of any commission rule, and rules 5.2, money belonging to others must be deposited in trust or escrow, rule 5.9, diversion, conversion prohibited, and rule 5.14, record keeping requirements. Recommended disciplinary action includes diversion, fine of $1,000, and a follow-up audit within 6 months. And Auditor Betsy Meredith is here to answer any questions you may have.
Comments?
What is the type of license on this current one? I don't remember.
It's an independent employing broker level license.
Okay, so this person, we've had a STIP, we had an
Yes.
FAO, and we still have issues, and things are still not being done correctly. So I think we should discuss an increase in fine or a decrease in the license. They've had many chances to correct things and do them right, many years to fix this, and it's not been done. By not having fiduciary accounts at the bank, people's money is not protected. If you have a fiduciary account, each owner would be protected. Without a fiduciary account, if there's an issue against one owner, they could clean out the entire account. For those of you who don't do property management, that's why the fiduciary is important. So this is still not a fiduciary account.
I agree with you, Renee. And I agree fines should be increased. With the license downgrade, is it similar? It's just they would have to be under a brokerage supervision. Is that
That's what happens when you downgrade somebody's license. Unless, in this scenario, if they're going from independent, you would be looking at downgrading them to a broker associate level under the supervision of an employing broker.
okay?
So the previous case where they had the FAO, the fine, the coursework, the public censure, and the follow-up audit. So they fixed everything back then, and now it's a mess again.
If I recall, and Eddie, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe from the time I'm the one that did this original audit, I don't believe there's ever been a fully clear compliant audit. And Eddie, please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't want to step out here, but I do believe that I've not yet been able to say we're good to go.
I believe that's correct. And I don't necessarily know the exact details behind the account not being a true fiduciary account, but that's something that we're seeing a lot more frequently. It's not necessarily the fault of the broker. And I say that in terms of not that it's not their responsibility to have the account set up properly, but we are discovering more and more that financial institutions will just label it as a trust or an escrow account. We're trying to do a little bit more detailed review in that and make sure that they are actual fiduciary accounts. We've recently drafted up a newsletter to present to brokers that will provide a little bit more guidance on this information so they understand, to make sure that the funds in those accounts are fully protected. There's no right to set off. They can't be seized. There can't be garnishment. And if they set these all up properly, then the beneficiaries in these accounts will each have deposit insurance. So we're trying to pass that information along to the brokers so they have more guidance so they can properly have these accounts set up. And maybe it's something.
Yeah, we're digging a little bit deeper. It's sometimes the institution, not the broker.
Right.
Is this something that might be good to add to like the ACU or, continuing education for property managers? If this is an ongoing issue, I mean, I'm just trying to think of other ways that, if you're not reading a newsletter, you're not educating. I mean, it seems like this is a pretty rudimentary part of property management. And, they do have a responsibility to do that. So, increased awareness, I think, is important here. Because as Commissioner Lind has rightfully pointed out that, if it's not a true fiduciary account, the public funds, could possibly be misused. I'm just trying to throw that out there. I don't know what the policy is for that or the.
I think it is in the classwork already.
Okay.
It's just whether people are paying attention or understand.
Okay.
Well, there's several issues that, yes, it's been in the ACU. But the ACU is taught, from January 1st to December 31st.
Right, yeah,
So, and unfortunately, not everybody takes their ACU.
yeah,
And, property management is not something that we're regulating. And so we can't force them to take property management education. And so I wholeheartedly agree that the education should be happening. That's not something we can enforce at this point because they're not regulated.
But property managers have to be licensed
Right.
so they do have to take the ACU.
Well, the ACU, but the ACU only touches on it. It doesn't go into this deep dive of what they really need to know. And, we can't force them to take any other education regarding property management at this point. So, the ACU is a high level pretty much for everything, or the course is going to be all day long, I think. And I wish there was a way. I don't know if we can start offering seminars, webinars or something for property managers once a quarter, have their questions answered. I don't know what the answer is, but there is definitely more education needed for property managers out there.
yeah. I mean, I guess I have another question. Are we seeing, because it seems in today's meeting, we have an outsized amount of property management cases. I think more than since I've been on the commission that I've seen. Is that just due? I mean, is this due to an increase in, is this a self-selecting sample in the fact that we've just done more random audits on property, people doing property management recently? I guess I'd like to know if there's a trend here that we need to be.
Well, what I see in the property management audits, and again, when we open up a routine audit, we never know what we're going to get, right?
Yep.
The issues with trust accounts, the issues with the reconciliations, it's incredibly common. It's very rare that I don't see issues with trust accounts on some levels.
I know it seems like every time we get a property management, that seems to be a common element. So, but I'm just wondering with the load of, investigative, matters we have today, I guess I was wondering, are we seeing an increase? But it sounds like it might just be fairly common and we just happen to.
Well, and sometimes when we open up routine audits, sometimes we just get sales only, right? Or leasing, there's not the property management. But if I see that somebody has property management, it's a rare occasion that you don't see the case before you.
Okay.
You certainly have a large majority or sample of property management related audits in this particular commission meeting. I think some of that's just due to timing with when the audits were completed. They weren't able to make it on the last agenda. So I think that might have a little bit to do with it, but our group is typically focusing on property management audits. We try to, and like Betsy said, we don't necessarily know what the broker's activity is going to be before we, open up the audit. And so I think it's a little bit of both timing and, this is what we try to focus on, because that is where I think more of the consumer risk lies versus a broker who's only doing sales transactions, not handling money belonging to others. And then similar with, the other audits that we're doing, which we kind of call broker owned audits, or the Chapter 511 or the Rule 511 audits, where we're doing an audit on a broker who's managing their own properties. And in those cases, they're typically only holding, a handful of security deposits for their own rental properties. So the risk, I think, is a little bit more limited compared to a broker who's managing, properties for others and has 100 doors or plus, in their portfolio.
Commissioners, just so that you're aware, one of the things that we're going to be kind of implementing going forward as a result of some of the issues that we've been seeing with the longstanding brokers where they haven't reconciled their accounts for 20 years is we are going to start doing more audits of brand new upgraded brokers. So if they've upgraded to independent or upgraded to employing broker, within the first 2 years that they upgrade, we're going to do the audit so that we can catch those types of issues earlier rather than trying to make heads or tails out of 15 years of not reconciling their trust accounts.
Yeah. That's a great idea.
Okay. Do we have a motion? Not everybody at one time.
Sorry, one more question. With the recommendation of diversion because of the prior two steps, just wanted to know the reasoning why not an FAO?
Yeah.
I don't know if I necessarily have a good answer for that. Maybe it was the thought behind that was, we certainly don't want to put brokers in a position where it seems like they're always in this kind of never-ending loop of follow-up audits. And I guess once we go to final agency order and there's a stip violation after that, I think your options for discipline are fairly limited. And I think it's more, you're looking at revocation at that point. And so it's some sort of trying to be understanding and work with the brokers and not start moving to a route of revocation, particularly in the instances where doesn't appear there's theft of funds. It's just they can't get the accounting straight, which a lot of real estate brokers aren't necessarily good at accounting. That's not their forte. And so
I thought that 2019 was an FAO. 2016 was a STIP and 2019 was an FAO.
Yes. 2016
And now
diversion, 2022 FAO.
So we've already got an FAO.
Yeah.
And we could certainly change it go a different route and discipline if that's, something that the commission feels is sufficient for this situation.
All right. Any other discussion?
So I think since we already have an FAO and we still have issues, we either need to jump the fine or change the license.
When we change someone's license and they're on property management and they have so many doors that they move over, is it a pretty onerous process of changing that? I mean, are there things that could happen with the properties he's managing that change? I guess I just would like a little bit of clarification on, especially in cases like this, what sort of the chain reaction is of downgrading someone's license.
So if it's
Downgrade to a property manager would be substantial.
Yeah.
unless they find somebody else to step in and take over the company
Right.
and they work for that individual.
I think we've seen it in a few different ways. Situations where the respondent is the employing broker, the brokerage, they're also the owner of the brokerage. So in those situations, maybe they find somebody that's willing to step in as the employing broker. They downgrade their license under that new employing broker. I think we've seen situations where maybe the broker, attempts to sell their book of business to a different brokerage, move their license, to a completely different brokerage. I think there's different ways that it plays out on a case, depending on the circumstances.
And there are times when someone else absorbs that book of business. We then follow up to make sure that new broker ensured compliance before they absorb that, right? Because there's a chain effect.
Yeah.
So this would be substantial. So if we don't want to go that route, I think we should do a much larger fine.
I mean, I'm wondering, how long has this respondent not been in compliance?
I think, did this start in 2016?
That was
Eddie?
a stip in 2016.
The original investigation or complaint that resulted in an investigation was a 2016 complaint and investigation.
So we're at 7 years now.
And then we had a follow-up audit based on that in 2020.
So I mean, why not a public censure? I mean, it seems like, you know, the respondents had going on 7 years. I mean, I think that, you know, I public censure might be, you know, a small increase in fine and a public censure, I would be okay with.
Didn't they have a public censure in 2019?
2022, the last step.
Okay,
Less.
all right.
Correct. And the last stipulation was a final agency order, and it did include a fine, coursework, public censure, and a follow-up audit. And going back to my original response as to, you know, why the diversion, maybe that was an oversight on my end. It might have just been, I don't know if this appeared to warrant a revocation of license from where we're at now.
And that's how I feel. It's not, you know, it's not revocation, but I think we're trying to, you know, modulate the correct, you know, discipline to, you know, get what we, you know, what the public, or they're protected. Renee, what do you think on fine?
5,000. We've got 5 issues at 2,500 each would be 12,500. And we've got stipulations, we've got FAOs, we've already done public censures. Nothing seems to be working. So I think 5,000, and we don't downgrade the license right now, but we do increase the fine.
With keeping the diversion.
I don't know if that matters. If you guys want public censure, that's fine. We've done public censure before, and I don't know if it did anything.
I'm okay with diversion with the increased fine.
All right, can we get a motion?
I move to accept staff's recommendation with an increase to the fine to $5,000.
We have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Graham. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay. Next item is investigative matter E. This is audit number X 2022-190. This audit was opened as a result of a previously signed stipulation. It appears that the respondent did not have a power of attorney in place to allow non-licensed on-site managers to sign leases, although the respondent did provide one during this audit, which he retroactively dated. Additionally, the respondent's trust accounts were not fiduciary trust accounts, but were corrected during the audit. Furthermore, the respondent's reconciliations do not appear compliant. The respondent has provided a plan to ensure current tenants receive interest accrued on the security deposit trust account, but he did not provide requested documentation regarding potential interest earned on the original accounts holding money belonging to others. At the time of the audit, the respondent acknowledged that the broker's disclosure to tenant and license ownership status was still not being provided in advance of receiving confidential information. However, the respondent indicated that online applications are no longer being accepted in an effort to remedy this. Possible violations include 12-10-2171M violation of any commission rule, Rules 5.14 record keeping requirements, Rule 6.5 brokerage relationship disclosures in writing. Recommended disciplinary action includes diversion, a fine of $1,000, and a follow-up audit within 6 months. And again, Auditor Betsy Meredith is here to answer any questions you may have.
Well, Betsy, I had a question on the bank. It looked like the bank was an out-of-state bank. It looked like it, is that correct?
Let me look.
Um,
Which doesn't necessarily, it's not problematic as long as it's a fiduciary trust.
Thought they had to be located in Colorado.
No, I believe this
No,
statute, the rule says it just has to be a depository institution that, has, FDIC insurance or NCUA deposit insurance. There is one section that, I think the statute says in it located within a state, but then I think it's expanded on somewhere elsewhere within the manual.
I do believe the trust accounts in terms of what we looked at are now currently fiduciary trusts.
Any other questions, comments?
So again, we had a STIP already and we still have issues after the STIP, correct?
Correct.
So again, I think the fine is too lenient, especially after having a STIP and still having issues. I'm not sure why we're being so lenient on some of these. I would, recommend that we not be. We need to get these people's attention and we need to get this stuff fixed. Again, it's other people's money. It's not their money. It's other people's money.
Any other questions or comments? May we get a motion? Anyone?
Now I move to accept staff recommendation with the increase in fine to $3,500.
Do we have a second?
I would be okay if we did a increase to 2,500.
The 2,500 we had done without a previous STIP. If we've got,
No, we did that on with.
oh, we did it on.
Yeah.
Two, we did too. Okay. All right. All right. Okay, I'll change.
Doing 1,500 when there's no prior, except for the previous matter. I think so far we've done 1,500 when there's no step.
Okay.
And 25 with.
All right, I'll change that then. Move to accept staff's recommendation with the change in the fine to $2,500.
Second.
Thank you, Graham. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes as presented.
Okay. Your next item is investigating matter F. This is audit X 2022-122. This was a routine audit opened on the respondent. The respondent requested and was granted a significant extension in order for the respondent to bring their operations, trust accounts, and reconciliations into compliance. The respondent's brokerage conducts both sales and property management. At the onset of the audit, the respondent's property management business was conducted in a name different than the name registered with the division. The respondent's property management forms did not include the required disclosures and did not appear to have been drafted for the respondent and the brokerage firm. However, the respondent corrected the name and forms issues during the audit. The respondent also had broker-owned rentals as well as third-party property management. Respondent's broker-owned rental reconciliations were missing the required journals, but were also corrected during the audit. However, the respondent's third-party property management accounting records and three-year reconciliations did not appear to balance. Reconciliations contain ongoing negative ledger balances, a broker ledger ranging from around $20,000 and possible missing funds from the account. Possible violations include 12-10-2171I, converting, diverting, commingling funds, 12-10-2171M, violation of any commission rule. Rules 5.9, diversion, conversion prohibited. Rule 5.10, commingling prohibited, and Rule 5.14, record keeping requirements. Recommended disciplinary action includes diversion, a fine of $1,000, and a follow-up audit within 6 months. And again, Auditor Betsy Meredith is here to answer any questions you may have.
Betsy, I have a question
Yes.
on what in your process determines whether you do a follow-up audit in 3 months or 6 months?
You know, this is actually, I'm going to defer to Eddie on this one because I let management handle the recommendations.
Okay.
You know, I think it just depends. Sometimes we certainly don't want to, do the follow-up audit too quickly and they don't have any time or ability to get any of the issues corrected. And then it's just an ongoing issue. So sometimes it seems like 6 months might be a little bit more appropriate to allow them to get some time to get those corrected. And then in those circumstances, it would appear that there's less excuses available for why things haven't been corrected at that time.
And this was a big enough firm with enough going on that, they a little bit more time, was Eddie and I talked about it. That's why we gave them an extension, a lengthy one in the first place.
Front end,
So
yeah.
I have a question about the fines. Is the thinking behind the lower fine in these cases with negative balances that an increase in the fine might have the ongoing effect of keeping the ledger balances in the negative?
No, not necessarily. I think it's a starting point for the commission to have a discussion around it, determine whether they think it's, that's an appropriate recommendation, or if that should be adjusted based on, your opinion of the situation and the report that we provide to you. I think a lot of the times that $1,000 seems kind of what is been more of a standard that's been recommended. And so it's, one of the, also, as you're aware, these can go into counteroffer negotiations and things of that nature.
So at the time, the time of this report, they corrected everything except for the third-party property management accounting records and three-way reconciliations, correct?
yeah, I
Everything
believe
else had been fixed.
I believe the vast majority with that extension, they got quite a lot done.
Okay.
The trust accounting and the reconciliations on the primary, the brokerage, not his individual ones, still had some anomalies.
Well, but that 20,000 kind of concerns me a little bit. Which is why I question the 6-month audit, because we kind of need to know where that money is, right?
So I believe what that is saying, and I would have to go back and do a little bit more research.
Extra, right?
That's money that I believe the broker was holding in the account. So they had $20,000 of their own money in the trust account, which would.
And there additionally, there was potential missing funds. And again, going back to the previous commission's question, part of what is happening is, are those true negatives? Are they posted before they sent the check? I mean, they're not fully compliant at this particular point, but I don't believe at this point there's missing money because there's enough money in there to cover that. The problem is it's the broker's money, if that makes sense.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
This is why I never wanted to become an accountant.
Or a property manager.
Yeah, for that matter.
Do we have any other discussion on the fine or anything like that, or are we good for a motion?
Well, I'll make motion. I move to accept staff recommendation, except to increase the fine to $1,500.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay.
Have a great one.
Thank you, Betsy.
Thank
You
you.
betcha.
Your next 5 investigative matters are all the same respondent. So investigative matter G, H, I, J, and K are all the same respondent. The complaints are 2022-1251, 2022-2020, 2022-2103, 2023-56, and 2023-202. These 5 complaints were filed against the respondent, stating that the respondent failed to remit owner statements and rental proceeds and/or security deposits to the complainants after they terminated property management services with him. Complaint number 2022-1251 also alleges that the respondent attempted to charge the complainant over $15,000 in renovation charges, but wouldn't provide invoices or documents to support the costs. The respondent didn't provide a written response or requested documents for review to any of the complaints. The respondent's bank records were subpoenaed and show that the respondent transferred funds from his rental trust account to his business operating account in amounts that appear inconsistent with the rental proceeds received. The respondent took over the property management company sometime between 2003 and 2006 and failed to update the accounts to remove the previous employing broker who was still listed as a managing broker on the accounts despite that broker's license expiring over 12 years ago. The respondent deposited $85,000 into his business operating account, which he stated came from a refinance. After making the $85,000 deposit, the respondent did not transfer any funds from the rental trust account to the business operating account for approximately 5 months. The bank records went through December 2022 and showed approximately $249,000 remaining in the rental trust account. The respondent stated he shut down business in October 2022, but a previous employee of his stated he was still managing approximately 100 properties. The respondent acknowledges that he owes owners money and stated the rental trust account has approximately $160,000 as of March 2023. The respondent provided one short interview, but otherwise didn't participate in any of the investigations. Possible violations include 12-10-2171H, failure to account for funds received, 12-10-2171M, violation of any commission rule, 12-10-2171Q, unworthy incompetent practice, Rules 5.3, accounts of the name of the brokerage firm or broker, Rule 5.15, maintenance and production of reports to beneficiaries, Rule 5.21, production of documents and records, Rule 6.25, must submit written response to a complaint. Possible or recommended disciplinary action includes a fine of $75,000, which is based off of 6 violations per case, not including 1M multiplied by the 5 complaints. Revocation, public censure, final agency order, and referral to criminal law enforcement. And investigator Marcy Rivera is here to answer any questions you may have on these 5.
Sorry, Eddie, before the commissioners discussed, I heard you say final agency order. Did you also say public censure?
I did.
Thank you.
I have a question on the fine. And this might be a question for Marcia. I think the fine is warranted, but with the revocation, would this fine be only enforced or due if this applicant was trying to regain their license? And I'm only asking, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, usually what we do is we stay the fines upon reapplication.
Okay.
Because a permanent revocation isn't actually permanent. They can come back in a couple of years and reapply. So instead of having to go through all of the background investigation of rehashing the prior discipline for you, if you stay the fines, we don't even go through that process until they've paid that fine in full.
Okay. I'm just concerned that that fine would get in the way or prevent restitution for the complainants or anybody else. So I just want to make sure that that fine, isn't in the forefront, I guess, and not.
So, I mean, unfortunately, per statute, you don't have the authority to impose restitution.
Yeah.
Now, if the criminal investigation occurs and a judge orders restitution, the court is going to hold this person accountable for paying that restitution separate from any fines that you would impose.
Okay. But the fine again would only be, I guess, due if they try to regain their license.
Correct.
All right, it looks like we lost Graham. So, any other questions or discussion on this case? Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'm a motion to accept staff recommendations.
Second,
Thank you. It looks like we'll have to vote without Graham. All those in, or any further discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Okay, your next item is investigative matter L. This is complaint number 2022-1706. On September 28, 2022, the respondent self-reported discipline he has had in several states as a result of a stipulation and agreement entered into with California in 2021. The respondent has also signed consent orders with North Carolina, Virginia, and Delaware due to the California stipulation. The California discipline was due to a property management audit conducted by the California Department of Real Estate that stemmed from a tenant security deposit complaint. The audit was concluded on October 31st, 2019, and found issues with the accounts not being set up as trust accounts, non-licensee, non-employee signers on the accounts, and incomplete, inaccurate accounting records. Based on the findings of the audit, an accusation was filed by the California Department of Real Estate in March 2021, and the respondent entered into a stipulation on December 7th, 2021. The respondent agreed to pay California Department of Real Estate the cost of the investigation, which was approximately $5,000, and enforcement, which was approximately $2,500, totaling approximately $7,600, in addition to paying $11,014.40 for the commissioner's cost of the audit. It also ordered a 30-day suspension stayed for 2 years upon payment of the audit fee and no further disciplinary action for 2 years. The consent orders of North Carolina, Virginia, and Delaware all required the payment of fees in continuing education. Possible violations include 12-10-2171M, violation of any commission rule, 12-10-2171X, license discipline in another jurisdiction, and Rule 6.23, immediate notification of violation required. Recommended discipline action includes diversion and a fine of $500, and Investigator Marcy Rivera is here to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. Any discussion, questions?
Is this license, it's currently active, is that correct?
Correct.
And were the fines paid? Do we know? Did he pay the fines to the other state?
I believe that the respondent did pay the fines to the other state. And the reason that multiple states were involved was once he entered into that agreement with California, that triggered a requirement to report those to the other states and jurisdictions that he holds a license in. And that's why you see Virginia and Delaware were part of, kind of the discipline he was dealing with in North Carolina.
All right, do we have a motion?
I motion to accept staff recommendations.
We have a second?
Second,
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay. Next is investigative matter M. This is complaint number 2022-270. The complainants filed their complaint against the respondent after purchasing the home. The respondent was both the agent and the majority managing member of the LLC that was the seller of the subject property. The complainants alleged that the respondent failed to disclose material defects of the property, specifically a rodent raccoon infestation in the property. After purchasing the home, the complainants discovered air fresheners and odor eaters hidden within the walls and sealed off access panels in the basement of the home. The complainants are currently in the process of remediation. Prior to remediation, the complainants had an environmental inspection performed that identified increased levels of histoplasma fungus present in the basement where their child's room was located. The respondent acknowledged that his contractors placed the odor eaters, air fresheners in the walls and sealed off access panels, but the respondent does not admit to concealing the issue. Possible violations, and my apologies, I had to include this one, so it might not be on your referral after we identified that it should be, but 12-10-2171M, violation of any commission rule or part 4, 12-10-2171Q, unworthy incompetent practice, 12-10-2171W, dishonest dealing, and 12-10-4043A, failure to disclose adverse material facts. Recommended disciplinary action includes final agency order, public censure, revocation, and a fine of $7,500. And Investigator Marcy Rivera is here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Well, Marcy, I had a question. It states in the investigation that the buyers were offered money by the broker and the seller. Was that money accepted?
No, it was not.
Do we know why it wasn't accepted? Because it was almost as much as the remediation bids.
They are currently pending to go to district court, and I think the jury or the trial is going to be set for next year, to my knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah, they're in the process of a lawsuit, and they just haven't been able to settle at this point.
Okay. So this one was interesting because they were offered the money to remediate, but also the inspector on the property didn't notice that there was any mice issue in the property, which is, I thought was very odd. If there was that big of a mice issue, you would think the inspector would have pointed it out.
Well, it was a raccoon issue. I think there was some disclosure made on the, by the broker that mouse droppings were identified in the seller's property disclosure without any more information or detail expanding on that. And I believe that a majority of the infestation was found in areas that were concealed off or would have been difficult, I think, for an inspector to find. I can't speak for home inspections. It's not something I do, but I think a lot of the issues were identified in places that would have been difficult to identify.
I do think there was an intent to conceal. I mean, the seller's property disclosure wasn't even filled out correctly. The box, yes, that there was an existing issue was not checked. And again, that might be semantics, or logistics, whatever. But, and I think that because of, I think it was a worker, they're, kind of saying that there was an issue that they tried to conceal it. I just don't know if it's warrants revocation. I do think the fine should be increased based on the addition of that violation to 10,000. So that's the only thing. I don't know if revocation is the answer.
Commissioners, just on the fine is currently maxed out at 7,500. We don't typically count the fine for the M
Oh.
violation because that just brings in violations from part 4, technically.
Okay,
So we don't typically count it, but can it be counted?
I'm gonna say, I'm not aware of a case where we have ever done it, so I will say no. So your max fine here would be 7,500.
Renee, your thoughts on revocation?
I'm not sure. I think they've got going to have bigger issues in court.
yeah, I agree. And there no prior steps. I think coursework though, I would like to add contracts just because the seller's property disclosure wasn't filled out correctly, and then coursework in ethics.
Thoughts, Renee? Are you okay with that?
Yes.
I mean, we're down to 3 of us, so.
So well, I'll make a motion
Okay.
for final agency order, public censure, fine of 7,500, and coursework in ethics and in contracts.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay. Next item is investigative matter N. It's complaint number 2023-194. On February 1st, 2023, the respondent entered guilty pleas to one, theft of $20,000 to $100,000. I believe attempted theft of $20,000 to $100,000, and 2, forgery government issued documents, both class 5 felonies. On May 1st, 2023, the respondent was sentenced 38 months probation, 14 days jail, in order to pay $2,491.50 in court fees, costs, and $35,600 in restitution. The respondent notified the division of the guilty pleas 2 days after the plea date. Additionally, the respondent inactivated her license on February 2nd, 2023. Possible violations include 12-10-217 1N, conviction plea to specified crimes, and division staff does not have any recommended disciplinary action at the time. I can answer any questions you may have.
Why is there no disciplinary recommendation? Normally when someone is disclosing, there is a minimum that we do of 250, I thought.
Certainly. And in this particular case, the conviction, the incident itself, we felt warranted maybe some commission discussion on how you wanted to handle this particular one, because it kind of seems a little bit outside of what we typically see from kind of a criminal conviction case.
Well, and they're inactive, so anything that we do, they would have to comply with prior to reactivating their license, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
It depends on what you decide to do, though. If you decided to revoke them, the status of their license would be irrelevant at that point.
Thoughts?
If they decided to ask for the license again, it would have to come back through us or not.
Only
They,
revocation, correct?
right, like they, as it currently stands, if they wanted to activate their license, they could, just, they would have to, I believe this respondent has an associate broker level license, so they would need to find a brokerage to hang it with. But there's no restrictions on their license as it currently stands, outside of just they inactivated it shortly after notifying the division of this incident.
So based on that, I would say we would like to do a revocation so that we can look at this if person decides to wants to activate their license again.
The other option, just so I know, if we do impose some sort of discipline and they want to reactivate their license, they have to, I guess, complete that discipline. Or
I believe if you were to recommend some form of disciplinary action outside of revocation, that they would need to come, and they agree to that, and sign the respective order, they would have to comply with the terms of that agreement, regardless of whether they have an inactive or active license.
Yeah.
I could be wrong in that, but I think that's the correct answer.
So commissioners, it just depends on what you order. If it's coursework, that's something that they can complete while they're inactive. If you suspend them, you can't be suspended while inactive. So that is something that Penny would have to work out as far as timing is concerned. Payment of a fine is something that they can do while they're on inactive status. It just depends on what you order.
But ultimately, in order to see this case again, if they reapplied,
we
we
need
would
it.
do revocation.
Okay.
Does anybody want to take an attempt at a motion?
I motion that we do disciplinary recommendation of revocation.
I second.
Are we invoking a fine with that as well, or just
I would say the $250 fine, which is what is standard.
So Commissioner Line, sorry. Typically the 250 is what the commission often will impose for disclosed convictions, but with a revocation, you typically do a max fine, which in this case would be 2,500. So I think you have those two options or anything in between for your fine. And then also revocation usually also includes a final agency order and public censure so that the public is notified of the revocation. Those are things just to consider if you want to amend your motion. We do have a motion in a second, but that is just for revocation with no other discipline.
Thoughts?
well, I think we should keep our standard of, FAO, public censure. The fine, anywhere between is, for me, not an issue. But I definitely think the FAO and the public censure need to go with the revocation.
And if I may, just as it was discussed earlier, one, we do typically do max fines with revocation, and it is often negotiated in a settlement that fine is stayed and only due if they ever attempt to reapply. So that would be consistent with what you've done in other cases.
Renee, are you comfortable amending your motion?
Joe, you have other thoughts?
No. I'll shut up.
You don't. Feel free to. If you have a comment.
No.
All right, Renee, would you like to amend your motion?
I'd say I'm a little hesitant, as Joe is with all of those things. So Joe, why don't you speak?
So say the license wasn't inactive, we would probably, I would assume, do a diversion, 250 fine, probation concurrent with their criminal sentence. revocation and then adding the FAL and PC and the max fine of 2,500, that to me, that's what I was wavering on, but
Yeah, I don't know if we need all that either.
Well, I mean, it has been in the past, but it's definitely not, we don't have to do that. So if that's what you're comfortable doing is just revocation, then that's within our purview to do so. So are we sticking with our first and our second?
I would say yes.
Yes.
Alrighty then. We have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Yes, Angela?
Commissioners, I heard the motion as for revocation, that has to be documented in either a diversion or a final agency order. Can you just clarify?
Well, I think that we can't do a revocation with a diversion. So a diversion is automatically a final agency order. It typically accompanies the public censure, but that I suppose is an optional term. But a diversion is reserved for sort of not formal discipline, and certainly a revocation wouldn't fall in that arena.
So we could do revocation with an FAO.
Correct. Marcia, do you have something else to add there?
I was going to add that it's problematic to do a stipulation for diversion because the language indicates that once they complete the terms, it's dismissed, and we don't dismiss after revocation.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So I think we're back to final agency order with public censure optional, Marcia and Penny. If revocation is the commission's decision on discipline.
I would motion for discipline of revocation and final agency order. And that's
Okay.
it.
Not a fine. Because we normally do the fine of 250.
Again, with revocation, if you're going
No,
to
that's
stay
true.
consistent with other disciplinary actions, it is a fine of $2,500. And again, that would be, the starting position of the commission, and that could be resolved in a manner where that fine is stayed. But that is consistent with previous actions when it comes to revocation.
Okay, I think I'm back.
Good, you can make this decision.
Sorry, Commissioners,
where are
we do have a motion pending. Joe, I don't know if you wanted to amend it, but the motion that's on the table is for revocation and a final agency order.
No, I would say in this case, I would keep that motion.
Okay. And Renee, are you good with the second on that?
Yes.
And Graham, are you okay with abstaining for this vote since you weren't here for the discussion?
I am okay with abstaining for the vote.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And Graham is abstaining. Motion passes.
Okay. Next item is investigative matter O. This is audit number X 2022-246. This audit was required by the broker stipulation for diversion dated on in October 2022. Recurring deficiencies involving record keeping requirements, negative balances, and duty to disclose conflict of interest, as well as new deficiencies related to commingling of funds were identified. Possible violations include 12-10-2171H, failure to account for funds received, 12-10-2171I, converting, diverting, commingling funds, 12-10-2171M, violation of any commission rule, Rule 5.9, diversion, conversion prohibited, Rule 5.14, record keeping requirements, Rule 6.17, duty to disclose conflict of interest and license status. Recommended disciplinary action includes diversion, a fine of $1,000, and a follow-up audit within 3 months. And Auditor Jay McLean is here to answer any questions you may have.
So there was diversion signed in 10 of 22, and there are still issues going on. Why would we do another diversion?
I'm not sure, and that is a decision that is certainly up to the commission to decide if, the disciplinary action we recommended is not sufficient and you'd like something more.
So they violated the previous diversion. So I'm wondering if we should do a public censure now. And there are still so many issues with this. I think the fine should be substantially more. The list of issues is quite lengthy.
So I'll say the remind that the other cases prior, we did not do an FAO. We did a diversion for, so follow-up audit, correct?
So the list here of things that are still wrong is much lengthier than the previous cases. There's only a couple things listed on here, but am I incorrect in remembering that there are still a lot of things wrong other than what's listed here? There are issues with the bank account labeling, who's holding the security deposit. It's not stated in the lease, the PMA, we're missing sales records files. We have issues with the website. We have conflict of interest, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Am I missing something? Did that get fixed? We've got the violation of the step. We've got issues with money, how they're doing money, about advancing and paying bills and paying itself back.
And all that.
Have those been fixed? Or they're not mentioned, but I had a long list of things that were still outstanding.
And my apologies. I'm just trying to research and read a little bit.
Eddie, was this the follow-up audit set for 3 months because of just the amount of issues or the additional new issues that came up?
I believe it was just the amount of issues that were ongoing with this one.
So because there are so many issues on this one that have not been corrected, they had time to fix things, they didn't correct it. We have an issue with a previous step.
Welcome to Access. Please sit tight. You'll have
That
That one wasn't me.
okay. So honestly, there's no incentive for them to fix these things if we're just going to do another audit. We had a previous issue, it wasn't fixed, and now we have quite a few things that haven't been fixed. I honestly think we should do the max. We should do $15,000 fine. There is no incentive to fix these things, and they are significant.
In reviewing, you're just trying to review some of the the audit work papers and the report. Looks like we still have ongoing issues with record keeping, trust accounts and accounting, negative balances. We had conflict of interest issues, disclosure issues, and there were some issues that were identified on one of the transaction files that we reviewed.
Any other thoughts? or comments? So you're wanting to see a fine of, you said 15,000?
Yes.
With still the diversion?
No, what would we do other than diversion? I
FAO.
mean, do FAO, not do, yeah. Okay, we could do an FAO with a fine of 15. So I moved to accept staff's recommendations, except that we're going to change the fine to 15,000, and instead of diversion, we're going to do an FAO.
Sorry, commissioners, someone check my math, but I believe the maximum fine here would be 12,500. We do not fine for the M violation because that just brings in the rule violations into the disciplinary structure. Again, but I am a lawyer. Someone please check that math for 5 violations. Thank you.
And Jay is trying to speak, but she's having microphone issues, and she's writing me and telling me that this broker did correct a lot of the items from the previous audit. These were the things that were still ongoing as of the conclusion of this audit. So I think some of the the thought process behind the recommended disciplinary action was that they were making progress towards compliance. They just weren't fully there now.
Well, they're in violation of the previous step. The bank account's wrong. Security deposit is not on the lease, not on the PMA. We're missing sales records files. The website's listing a broker whose license expired previously. We have conflict of interest not disclosed in the contract. We're having an issue with reserves and not having them. So the brokers, how they're paying money, there are still multiple issues outstanding that they've had time to correct. So I still would go with the fine of 12,500.
And I know Jay's having trouble. So all those things are still outstanding, Jay? No, they're not.
Well, that's
Okay.
what it's.
Yeah, she's having microphone issues.
Renee, I see your point. However, I would like to stick to the similar discipline we did on prior cases, which is just increase of fine to 2,500.
Well, the thing with this case, it's not just the property management, it's sales also. It's property management, it's sales, it's website, it's multiple things. It's not just an escrow account.
I know, I want
My
to
apologies.
get some. Sorry, go ahead, Eddie.
No, in reviewing the report that we presented and that I have in front of me, it does look, like I said, there were some accounting issues. I think there was a double payment to one particular tenant or one particular owner that caused either a negative balance or an issuance of money to somebody that they shouldn't have received. I do believe there were some negative ledger balances that were identified. I believe these were true negative ledger balances. So I don't think they were just an accounting error or posting of a expense where they hadn't paid it out. And then I believe in one of the transaction files that we reviewed, there was an exclusive right to buy that the broker had not signed.
Welcome to Access. Please sit. You'll have the opportunity to access tickets.
Sorry,
And
that's me.
then conflict of interest disclosure that wasn't made that they should have. I think it was really just those 3 things that we were citing in the report, not to downplay the accounting issues or the negative balances. I think that's the most significant, but I'm not seeing anything on the report that's in front of me about the website or any issues in regards to that. That might have been something that got fleshed out during the audit, but wasn't something that we were citing as a violation or possible violation.
Are the bank accounts still labeled incorrectly?
I believe the bank accounts have been correct, the labeling has been correct. I don't see any, I can certainly do more research on this after the fact and go through all the work papers, but just in the report that we presented, that's not an issue that we're identifying at the conclusion of this audit.
So I think what I kept saying from Jay was she was saying these things have been. So if we can't come to conclusion, is there any way to put this to the next meeting to where we can hear from the investigator? I feel like, we're not getting all of the information, unfortunately, because of some technical issues from the investigator. And I don't want to impose some discipline that maybe isn't necessary if we don't have all the facts.
And Madam Chair, if we move it down in the agenda, we can work on her technical issues and still be able to do it at the end of
Okay.
these matters.
I think we should try to do that. I really just don't want to impose something that when we don't have all the facts. And I would actually like to take like a 5-minute break, if that's okay with everybody, or even 10 minutes. I don't know, 5-10 minutes.
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
10 minutes would be great.
Okay. It is 11 o'clock. Let's take a break until 11:10.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Jay, this is David. Is your microphone working now? You want to test it out real quick?
I have her on the phone.
Okay, good.
Jay, I got disconnected from the phone call and it's going to your voicemail. Hello?
Eric, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Is there an echo?
There, you know what? Because I think because you're logged on. Hey, hit mute on your video. Okay, now you should be able to speak without an echo.
Well, wait.
There.
I'm trying to find it.
Here, I'll mute you. Never mind.
Thank you.
All right.
She's also going to need to lower her volume on the video side.
Yeah, we have her muted on the video.
Well, but when she talks, you can hear her echo from the speaker.
Gotcha.
So she'll have to lower her volume on her computer.
Did you hear that, Jay? Lower your volume on your computer. Just
Yes.
Mute you. Okay. I think it works.
Okay, am I echoing? Thank
Nope.
you.
All right.
So
Looks like,
is everyone back on?
yes, we are back and we can hear you. Jay, so
I
actually,
apologize, commissioners. I am so sorry for this inconvenience. I don't know what was wrong, but thankfully with Eric, I was able to fix it.
that's
Not a
okay.
problem at all.
We needed a break. So we'll just pick back up with matter O. And I think you were trying to say that some of that stuff in the original report had been fixed, correct?
Yes, a lot of it has. The broker did provide a lot of the transaction documents. The broker that was advertised on the website has been removed. The remaining issues are indeed conflict of interest, which was an issue in the prior audit. An associate broker of the brokerage sold a property that she was part of the LLC, and it was not noted. There was another issue where exclusive right to sell was not signed. And lastly, the accounting is very wonky. I tried very hard to understand exactly what this broker, how he was accounting. It is correct. His clients do not have any type of advances, so he is paying for any repairs that need to be done out of his pocket, and there are negative balances. So accounting is still an issue, but a lot of the other issues have been corrected. Not to say everything has, but many of the things have been.
Has it been corrected on the lease and the PMA as to who is holding the security deposit?
That one in particular was a client that he just signed on, and then immediately that client left. That is no longer an issue. The client has the money, but that particular property is no longer in his portfolio. He does not represent that property owner.
So the regular leases and PMA do state that correctly?
Yes, they do.
Okay, and is the bank account labeled correctly?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we're down to issues with sales, conflict of interest, and negative balances.
Correct.
Okay, and these are all issues that were brought up previously when he had a diversion. They're still going on. So,
Yes.
okay, all right. So
All right.
Joe, what do you feel would be an acceptable fine then? A couple things have been corrected, but not everything, and we are in violation of a stipulation.
I would do 2,500.
I would as well, and I feel like that is in line with what the discipline we've we've been providing or recommending previously in the meeting with similar fact pattern.
This one though includes issues in property management as well as sales. The other ones were just property management.
Renee, I totally see your point, but and I know we're here to protect the public, but I'm also looking at this as, was there an intent to harm, immediate threat, intent to deceive, or was it just negligence? And again, both of them are not good, but there's definitely a difference. And I believe, this is more on the negligent side. And yeah, there's only so many chances that we should give them. But I would say, if we do more in line of what we've done with the other cases today, and then if this comes back, definitely I think it would, you know, warrant, since that's my favorite word, more stronger discipline.
Because we have that follow-up audit in 3 months
Yes.
we're doing. Okay.
Will someone remind me, did we have education in the previous stipulation for diversion in 2022? I don't know if we brought that up, but it's been maybe about 20 minutes since we've talked about the previous step.
Believe so. If you give me 1 second, I can take a look at it. There was a fine, 12 hours of coursework, and yes, there was coursework in property management, coursework in trust accounts, and a follow-up audit.
Okay.
Were the courses completed and the fine paid?
I believe so.
Yeah, the courses were completed. There is a completion email. I don't know about the fine.
Yeah, the completion of coursework and payment of fines, that all that typically gets run through and verified through the ESP department before they were to, you know, release the broker from, you know, the diversion.
Well, he wasn't released though.
Correct. That's why we did this follow-up audit as part of the stipulation for diversion. So my group, we handle the audit. ESP is the group that will handle the payment of the fine, the verification that they completed the continuing education. We do take a look at those things, you know, on occasion, or ask, you know, for the proof of the continuing education, things of that nature. But that certainly all gets verified through ESP. If a broker or respondent were to successfully complete the audit, we write a memo to the ESP department. That way they make sure that they've satisfied all the elements of the diversion before it would, you know, move on from there. In this case, we conducted a follow-up audit. There were still ongoing issues. That's why you're hearing that now.
Okay, so I think we need a new a new motion.
I will motion.
Go ahead.
I'm going to take it from you, Graham. I'm going to motion for staff recommendations, but to increase the fine to $2,500.
I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, your next item is investigative matter P. This is audit number X 2022-243. This is the respondent's third audit after executing 2 different stipulations for diversion stemming from previous audits that both identified trust accounting issues that resulted in discipline requiring follow-up audits. Since September 2022, the respondent no longer participates in property management, but did not correct any of the trust accounting issues previously identified. Specifically, the rental trust account still holds a few $1,000s that the broker cannot account for, but believes are commissions due to her, and the security deposit trust account held funds belonging to non-real estate activity mixed with 2 outstanding security deposits belonging to tenants that vacated their properties years ago. During the audit, the respondent returned one of the security deposits to the respective tenant and did escheat the remaining deposit to the Great Colorado Payback. We also received some recent updates just the other day, including some updated reconciliations. As it currently stands, the security deposit trust account only holds $20,000 in relation to the respondent's daughter for a non-real estate activity. But the rental trust accounts still show an unreconciled balance ranging from between around $1,200 to $2,300. It was previously, at the time we concluded the audit, you know, approximately, I think, $4,000 to $6,000. So that balance has gone down. Possible violations include 12-10-2171H, failure to account for funds received, 12-10-2171M, violation of any commission rule, and Rule 5.14 record keeping requirements. And recommended disciplinary action includes a letter of concern if the broker were to close out their remaining trust accounts. So basically, close out the remaining trust accounts and dismiss the audit with a letter of concern would be the recommended disciplinary action. And Auditor Jay McLean is here to answer any questions you may have.
So do we know if the coursework was completed and the fine was paid previously?
I believe so. I can try to take a look at that. I would have to jump on VPN and get into our share drive to be able to look into the ESP folders to see, but I would say yes, I believe so.
Commissioners, I'll take a look and update you. Just give me a minute.
The typical process is, oh, I'm muted.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, I kind of a ditzy day, but the typical process is they pay the fine, they take the courses, and once all of that has been confirmed and paid, it then gets to the stipulated audit. So, and I believe that is true, you know, even with the other boards and commissions, that it's not going to be re-audited or work product review, anything like that won't happen until they have completed their coursework and paid the fine.
Well, then if that doesn't happen, Penny usually brings that back to us for an ESP review. Okay.
Correct.
Right.
So was the business sold? There was some asset purchase agreements from her to her, from her company to her for the PMAs. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I believe she has 33 properties in total. She did not sell the entire book of business. She contacted all of her clients. Some of her clients just had 1 or 2 properties, so they, as property owners, just took back the management themselves. There were a few that went to a different property management company just on their own. And then there were, I believe it was 13 that she ended up assigning the assets, the property management agreements to a different property manager. So she no longer is in the business. She is still selling real estate, but she no longer does property management.
So why is there money in a trust account, in the security deposit trust account?
It's related to a non-real estate activity. It's for her daughter. It's a court order related to her daughter. So she's holding the money in a trust account. And during the audit, that money was in that account with security deposits that belong to tenants. So that was an issue we were raising with the respondent during the audit. As it currently stands, all the security deposits have been returned. That account is only holding the money related to the court order for her daughter for this non-real estate activity.
So is it okay if it's titled as security deposit? Does it need to be changed?
I think in best practice, yes, I would agree with you there. Rule 511 now covers brokers holding money belonging to others for any other non-real estate activity. So it would be appropriate for the broker to hold the money in a trust account. What we felt during the audit was not appropriate was that money for a non-real estate activity was in a trust account with money that was related to security deposits and actual property management. So I think the best practice in that case would have been to create a separate trust account for this non-real estate activity, these funds for the non-real estate activity. As it currently stands, the respondent's no longer performing any property management. So I don't see the issue with the old security deposit account having this non-real estate activity funds. I think the account could be labeled differently. And that's why, you know, the recommendation was close out the trust accounts and move, you know, we closed the audit with a letter of concern. The rental trust account does still have some funds in there that are unaccounted for, that the respondent believes are, you know, commissions that she had earned that she had just never paid herself. There's no evidence or anything to support that these are missing monies belonging to a property owner, but we just don't know. And the reconciliations were an ongoing issue over all of the 3 audits that we've conducted. And so I think that led to the respondent no longer wanting to perform property management and kind of exit that, that respective business. And Jay might have more to add on that.
No, everything you said, Eddie, is correct.
And commissioners, I'm not saying anything to indicate that she has not fully complied with the terms of her prior stipulation. It looks like she's completed everything.
Great. Do we have a motion?
Yes, in commission matter P, I move that we accept staff's disciplinary recommendations.
Second.
Thank you, Joe. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, we are on to investigative matter Q, complaint number 2022-1365. The complainant alleged that the respondent was practicing without an active real estate broker's license. The investigation found that the respondent had an exclusive right to buy listing contract representing buyers as buyer's agent and submitted 2 offers to purchase while his license was inactive. Possible violations include 1210-217-1M and Rule 6.26, actions while license is suspended, revoked, expired, or inactive. Our recommendation is a dismissal with a letter of concern, and Investigator Peters can answer any questions.
Thank you. Any discussion on this one? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Michelle. We did have proof that this person was emailed, contacted multiple times about their license expiring. And correct?
That's
so
correct.
It would be on that person, on them, the fact that they didn't renew the license. So I think there should be more than just a letter of concern.
What was the timeline on the notices about the license expiration?
Yeah, the notices were sent out to the respondent on November 1st of 21, December 7th of 21, and January 20th of 2022, with the license officially expiring on December 31st of 2021.
Remind me, was this when everyone sort of got switched over to a new track period for their license renewal?
I don't remember that. I don't remember.
Okay.
2022 wouldn't be when we were doing the transitional license cycle. That started in as a result of the 2018 sunset review.
Okay.
All right, do we have a recommendation then on discipline? Or discussion on what you would like to see?
Yeah, I'll make a motion in commission matter Q. I move that we accept staff's disciplinary recommendations.
Do we have a second?
second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Investigative matter R is complaint number 2022-1429. The complainant was represented by the respondent as a buyer's agent and also as a seller's agent. The complainant directed the respondent in writing to terminate the contracts with her brokerage firm and remove her property from the MLS as she no longer wanted the respondent to represent her. However, the respondent provided the complainant with an amend extend stating that she would only expire the property from the MLS and terminate the relationship after the complainant reimbursed her in the amount of $1,535. The property remained active in the MLS for a month after the written request was made. Possible stat violations are 1210-217-1Q, unworthy incompetent practice, and disciplinary recommendations are coursework in brokerage relationships, coursework in ethics, diversion, and a $500 fine. And Investigator Peters can answer any questions.
Any discussion or questions on this one? Seeing none, may I get a motion?
In commission matter R, I move that we accept staff's disciplinary recommendations.
We have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Investigative matter S is complaint number 2022-1257. The complainants worked with the respondent in the purchase of a property. The respondent was also the listing broker for the property. The complainants alleged that the respondent failed to disclose known adverse material facts. According to the respondent, she was not aware of the adverse material facts. Their complainants also alleged that the respondent only appeared to be working for the sellers and not for them. The investigation found that the respondent may not have properly disclosed her brokerage relationships to the buyers. The respondent indicated that she was originally a buyer's agent for the buyers, but she did not provide a copy of the exclusive right to buy as requested. The respondent ultimately was an agent for the sellers and treated the buyers as customers. Possible violations include 1210-217-1M, 1210-217-1Q, and Rule 6.5. Disciplinary recommendations are coursework in brokerage relationships, diversion, and a $1,000 fine. And Investigator Peters can answer any questions.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, may I get a motion?
In commission matter S, I move that we accept staff's disciplinary recommendations.
We have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Investigative matter T is complaint number 2022-1493. The complainant was represented by the respondent in the purchase of the subject property. Several allegations against the respondent were made by the complainant. However, the only allegation that could be substantiated was that several of the respondent's transaction documents were written inaccurately. Possible violations include 1210-217-1Q, and disciplinary recommendations are coursework in contracts and forms, diversion, and a $500 fine. And Investigator Gabarty can answer any questions.
Thank you. Discussions or questions? Seeing-
Just a quick refresher. Was this a first time this respondent has had a matter before the commission? If I could just be refreshed on that.
Let me check.
Stipulations.
Yes, commissioners, it is.
Okay.
we have a motion?
In commission matter T, I move that we accept staff's recommendations.
We have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Investigative matter U is complaint 2023-535. On March 10th of 2023, the respondent entered a plea of guilty to assault 3, knowingly recklessly causing injury, a class 1 misdemeanor. The respondent was sentenced to 2 years probation and ordered to pay a $1,684.50 in court costs and restitution. The fines have been paid and probation is ongoing with the possibility of consideration for early termination. On March 17th of 2023, the respondent's attorney reported the respondent's conviction to the division on his client's behalf. Possible violations include 1210-217-1N, and disciplinary recommendations are diversion, a fine of $250, and probation to run concurrent with the criminal sentence. And Investigator Martinez can answer any questions.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I have a motion.
I move to approve staff recommendations.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, so investigative matter V is complaint number 2022-2109. On August 31st of 2022, respondent received an order of judgment in a civil case at the conclusion of a jury trial, which occurred on August 19th, 2022. The jury found that the plaintiffs were entitled to judgment against respondent and his co-defendant in the amount of $200,000 for breach of fiduciary duty, fraud and deceit and civil conspiracy, $250,000 for civil theft, which provides for treble damages, resulting in a damage award of $750,000. Total judgment in the amount of $950,000 plus post-judgment interest. The respondent stated that he has not paid any money towards the judgment. And after the report was finalized, the respondent's appeal was dismissed. A possible violation is 1210-217-1V. We did not do a disciplinary recommendation on this one. Just it's a little unique and thought the commission could discuss it. And Investigator Denise Wright is here to answer any questions you may have.
Initial thoughts?
Can we dismiss this one?
Can we dismiss this one?
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, I think we technically, yes, we can.
Why was the writ of garnishment or the complaint filed? Just curious on that process.
Or why was the complaint filed with us, or why was the complaint filed?
Yeah, with the division, just because he was is a licensed broker.
Right. And when you have a civil judgment such as this, it does fall under our jurisdiction.
Okay.
Yeah, it says that they were told by division staff to submit a complaint. So jurisdiction can be determined.
I mean, do we do like a letter of concern or?
I'm just confused on the jurisdiction piece of that.
Yeah.
Because everything that happened, he wasn't licensed at the time. Correct. So that's where I was confused of why it would be reported.
Well, we
to
can
the
consider conduct.
division.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We can consider conduct outside of specific brokerage activity. Angela might be able to speak to our jurisdiction a little bit more.
So commissioners, what I'll say is that it's a strange case. This is a violation that you don't see very often. It's when a broker has a judgment for civil damages entered against them. It's the timing of the judgment that we look to determine jurisdiction. I'm pretty sure that this one is in effect during his licensing period. And so it's up to you what you want to do with respect to this, considering it as a license law violation. The civil penalties are in existence, obviously, regardless of what you do here today. So what you're being presented with is this is a potential license law violation by virtue of what happened in the civil court and whether you wish to impose discipline on him for that. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, does someone want to make a motion? Or any further discussion? Graham, you had mentioned a letter of concern. Is that just so that if some discipline happens in the future, we have that in the
Yeah,
file?
I mean, I think so, because I feel like if it's been brought to us, I mean, I feel like it rises to the occasion of us probably responding somehow. And if we dismiss with a letter of concern, I think, I think it would be better for us to at least say, that we touched on it, we discussed it, there's something here that we think, could rise to something in the future. But right now it's more, this is a concerning behavior, and we don't really feel like it warrants discipline at the moment, if that makes any sense.
All right, would you like to make a motion?
Sure. In commission matter V, I move to dismiss with a letter of concern.
We have a second. Thank you, Renee. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes with a letter of concern.
Investigative matter W is complaint number 2022-2194. The complainant purchased a property that was listed by the respondent. The complainant alleged that the respondent entered misleading information into the MLS regarding the age of the boiler, roof, and windows. The investigation noted the potential violation that the respondent failed to exercise reasonable skill and care for his clients, the sellers. Possible violations are 12-10-217-1A, 12-10-217-1Q, 12-10-407-2B, and 12-10-217-1M. Our disciplinary recommendation is a final agency order, coursework and brokerage relationships, and a fine of $2,500. And Investigator Dionese Wright is here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Sure. Investigator Wright, if you could just refresh my memory on this. The investigation, did it find, it said that she failed to the respondent failed to exercise reasonable skill and care for their clients. Did they knowingly and intentionally introduce, false or misleading information into the MLS? And did the buyers or the sellers act on that information?
Well, as outlined in the report, that was part of the complaint from the buyers. And the investigation, the sellers, his clients, did have to hire an attorney to mediate with the complainant buyers for what he put in the MLS, and just same with what was in the report.
Yeah.
They alleged that he didn't advise them that they needed to disclose certain things. So is that helpful?
It is. Thank you. I'm
Okay.
actually just getting back to the report now.
Okay.
Just buried in there. So I was hoping, yeah. So that covered what I was. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So this person had a STIP in 2018 and 2020, and now we have another complaint. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the STIP that was done in 2020 also involved failure to disclose adverse material facts, correct?
That's correct. On this investigation, we actually did not do a violation for failure to disclose material facts. The violations are for false advertising, exercising reasonable skill and care, unworthy incompetent practice. But yes, you're correct. The previous one was on adverse material facts.
So I would say because of the prior STIPs and what's going on again, that the fine should be increased.
What would you like to see there, Renee?
$7,500, but I'd settle for $5,000.
Yeah, I'm with you on an increase in fine on this one. Failure to disclose adverse facts and pretty serious. So I would be okay with going up to a fine of $5,000 as well. And would coursework in ethics be applicable here?
That was on their last one.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, maybe they need to do it again.
And her.
All right, well, can we get a recommendation? Or I'm sorry, a motion?
Sure. In Commission Matter W, I move that we accept staff's disciplinary recommendations with an increase of the fine to $5,000 and an additional coursework in ethics.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
All right, investigative matter X is complaint number 2023-175. On December 7th, 2022, the respondent was convicted of menacing, a class 1 misdemeanor. Respondent was sentenced to 2 years probation on a deferred judgment and sentence. Respondent did not submit the requested court documentation to the Division of Real Estate and failed to submit a written explanation. Possible violations are 1210-217-1N, 1210-217-1P, 1210-217-1M, and Rule 6.23 and Rule 6.25. The disciplinary recommendation is diversion, a fine of $1,000, and probation with the division concurrent with the deferred sentence. And Investigator Coates is here to answer any questions.
Great. Any discussion? Seeing none, may I get a motion?
I move to accept staff recommendations.
Second.
Graham, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We are now on to licensing matters.
Okay, licensing matter A is an application. This is complaint number 2023-148. On October 11th, 2018, the applicant was convicted of tampering with physical evidence, destroying a class 6 felony, and an assault 3, no reckless cause injury, a class 1 misdemeanor. The applicant was sentenced to 7 months in jail, 3 years probation, and a fine of $12,071.49, with $600 waived and he was ordered to pay restitution of $9,073.45 joint with the co-defendants. The restitution has been paid in full, and the applicant has completed the jail and probation sentence. As usual, there's no recommendation, and Investigator Quintana is here to answer any questions you may have.
I'm gonna sound like a broken record, and I know you probably know what I'm gonna say, but there's no letters of recommendations, correct? Provided. So
Let me take a look.
I don't think so.
Yeah, if they're not in the report, they weren't provided.
So we saw this previously and asked for more information, didn't we?
I don't think this one.
No, I think it's coming up.
No?
Well,
It sounds familiar though.
Yeah.
Well, on a general note, the application says to provide letters of recommendation, but they're not required. I think they should be required, and more than one, because not only does it help the commission, but it would benefit these applicants. Because I'm going to recommend, if we haven't already, that we defer this application to the next meeting to allow the applicant to get some letters of recommendations to us.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I mean, I'm leaning in favor of the respondent here, but I would like to, just see some more personal recommendations, at least one, to sort of kind of tip over the edge here.
All right, so I think we need to make a motion to defer to the next meeting with requests to getting letters of recommendation.
It looks like, excuse me, it looks like there is 2 recommendation letters. I don't know why. Let me just look. There, on my end, I could see there's 2 in the exhibits. There's 2 recommendation letters in the exhibits.
I see a possible employing broker, and then I think 3.
It's exhibit 7 and 8.
Those are, ours is a personal statement and an employment history.
Yeah, on our end, Tabitha, that's not the exhibits. But you're saying he did send in 2 letters?
There is 2 letters of recommendation, yes.
Because I have a broker's letter.
I have that as well.
Yeah,
I don't know why I have issues with updating the information, but I did update it on my end. I see the report and on the exhibits, it's 7 and 8, showing that there is 2 recommendation letters.
If you would like, I can read those recommendation letters. I won't put anything that would be personally identifiable. I would cross that out. I do see them in here.
Yeah, the summary says no letters of rec.
Okay.
On my report, it's I don't know why it didn't update.
That's a mistake on our end. We probably didn't get it updated to you, or there might have been 2 versions of the folder. And I think we also had updated it. Remind me, Tabitha, they also wanted to make sure that the restitution had been paid in full.
That is correct. And
we
they did send in that information.
Yep. So that was also additional information you had requested at the last meeting. And we have confirmed that he paid the restitution in full.
And that was exhibit 1, that it was paid in full.
Yes.
Yeah, that one we see. So we did see this at the last meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So based on the fact that we have recommendation letters and restitution has been paid, I would move to accept this application.
I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes for full approval.
So moving on to licensing matter B, this is complaint 2023-399. This is a preliminary advisory opinion. In 2004, the applicant was convicted of theft of $500 to $1,500, a class 4 felony. The applicant was sentenced to 2 years diversion. However, the diversion was revoked and she was resentenced to a 1-year probation. The applicant has completed all terms of probation and paid the fines and restitution in full, and the case is closed. There's no recommendation, and Investigator Quintana can answer any questions you may have.
I would move for a positive preliminary advisory opinion on this client.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I would just add, I want to thank the applicant for providing such a thorough, the amount of personal recommendations were, I mean, it wasn't just one, there were multiple. So I want to thank them for that.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion for positive opinion has passed.
Licensing matter C is complaint number 2023-232. This is a preliminary advisory opinion. In 2016, the applicant pleaded guilty to accessory to a crime, a class 4 felony. Her probation was terminated early in December of 2021. At the April 2023 meeting, the commission asked the applicant to provide letters of recommendation. The applicant has supplied 1 letter of recommendation, which has been added to the report and exhibits. There's no recommendation, and Investigator Quintana can answer any questions.
Well, there's only one recommendation. I do appreciate it's very convincing and from a convincing source. So I would move to for a positive opinion on this applicant.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes for positive opinion. All right. On to ESP.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'm stepping in for Penny. She had to leave the meeting. So I'll be presenting matter 2022-1303. In early 2021, the licensee was involved in a continuing education audit who failed to respond. Ultimately, they voluntarily signed a diversionary stip, which involved makeup education as well as a fine of $862.50. They did supply the makeup education, but after many attempts, failed to pay the fine. In August of 2022, this went before the commission as a stip violation. At that time, the commission voted for a final agency order, a $2,500 fine, and public censure. The licensee did not agree to that, and this went to hearing. There was an initial decision issued in December of 2022, and a final agency order issued in January of this year, which was a final agency order, $2,875 fine and public censure. After many attempts, the licensee has failed to pay the fine as well as the previous fine. So we're bringing this to the commission as another stip violation, and the division recommends another fine of up to $2,500, a final agency order, public censure, and revocation. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions or comments? All right. Do we have a motion?
I motion that we accept recommendation on the ESPA.
We have a second,
Second.
Graham. Any further discussion? Motion passes. I'm sorry. All those in favor? Did I already do that?
No.
Okay. It's been a long meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Sorry,
You're good.
my brain just went, no more. We are on to our final matter. We have Attorney General matter, so we need to go into executive session. Everybody has the link, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Sorry, Michelle, commissioners, just a reminder to be sure and mute or leave this platform so that we don't get any bleed through. I think the division has that covered for us, but just out of an abundance of caution, especially since we are working without Doreen today. So thank you in advance for that.
this is Commission Chair Michelle Espinosa. This is a Colorado Real Estate Commission meeting on June 6th, 2023. And the time is now 12:01 p.m. I move that the commission enter into executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute Section 24-6-4023A2 for the following purpose: to receive advice from counsel regarding the case and receive a counteroffer from the respondent in case number 2021-1760 Is there a second?
Second.
Graham? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There are 4 votes in favor of executive session. We will now enter into an executive session. All right, it looks like everybody is back. All right, so I believe we need to make a motion. Joe, you're muted, Joe.
Just trying to check on that.
And this is for AG matter A, just to be clear. Thank you.
Okay. Madam Chair, I motion in AG matter A to accept the alternative settlement option as discussed in executive session.
Great, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I just want to make sure that were we supposed to accept or offer alternative? I just want to make sure the wording is correct on that.
I think technically you're offering alternative settlement guidance. So Joe, if you will accept that amendment, and Renee, if you will second it, we will move forward.
I do accept that amendment.
I second.
Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, I believe that concludes our commission meeting today.
I had a question.
Let's see, there's Marcia. Go ahead.
Okay, I have a question, and perhaps you could do, I don't know how long it would take to find out, but on how much it costs to actually do an audit, or what the range is. If we could get that information in the future. I thought it was interesting in one of the cases we looked at today, where California actually charged that audit back to the person. And we have a lot of cases where we are doing follow-up audits. And I think it might be appropriate to be charging that to the person. So if it's possible to find out how much audits cost, that might be helpful.
I can see what we can put together as far as the number of staff hours used to do an audit. Just keep in mind, you don't have the authority to recoup the cost.
Yeah.
No.
We don't have the statutory authority. But I can see if we can come up with a ballpark figure.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see everybody in August.
Sounds great. Wait, is our,
Right.
wait, really quick, our forms meeting is in June. I haven't seen
Oh,
that come
June
through on a calendar.
20th.
June 20th. Okay.
June 20th
Okay.
at 9 a.m. So
Got
you
it.
will see each other before August.
Look at me, wishful
Oh,
thinking.
goody.
At that forms meeting. All right. Have a great day, everybody.
You
Thanks,
too.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.